I believe in a man with a check in his hand, taking care of his kids like a good man can. Ain't nothing like a good man. Loving his woman and strong in his stance. Ain't nothing like a good man. Hello, Home Slices, and welcome back to Sup Media Reviews. Season 2 is here, and we're kicking things up a notch. We're diving into music, TV, and movies from over 20 years ago, plus we're kicking off a brand new YouTube series that's going to bring even more fun your way. This season is full of fresh reviews, special guests, and plenty of laughs. Ready to jump in? Let's get into this week's episode. What is up, Home Slices, and welcome back to the Sup Media Reviews podcast. Now, today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently because we're doing something that we've never done before here at Sup Media Reviews. Now, back in the day when I was first starting this podcast, I decided to call it Sup Media Reviews because I didn't want to be pigeonholed into doing just TV reviews or just movie reviews. I wanted to be able to review things that I really love. So pretty soon in the future, I will start reviewing albums, some classic albums, and give my feedback on them, maybe sing some songs. I really love music. It is very near and dear to my heart, even more so than movies and television. So I'm excited to talk about some of those things coming up here soon. But today is a different form of media that we have never talked about before. And so I'm actually going to be focusing on a stage play. Now, back when I was in elementary school, I had a friend named Trina who we were kind of hanging out maybe after school during lunch or something. And she was telling me about this play that she watched at home with her family. And she told me about some jokes that were in the play. It sounded like a really fun watch. And I specifically remember her saying the term bearilla. I had no idea what she was talking about, but it sounded fun. But shortly after that, my family became aware of Tyler Perry. Now, everyone pretty much knows who Tyler Perry is now. He started off as a playwright, making plays that were for predominantly Black Christian audiences, and eventually worked his way up to the multi-millionaire mogul that he is today. His own movie production studio in Georgia. He is doing bigger things these days. So yeah. One of the things that really brought me and my family together around the holidays was watching Tyler Perry plays. And so I kind of wanted to focus on one of my probably top 3 plays that me and my family really enjoyed. And this time we are talking about Tyler Perry's Meet the Browns. Now, before we get into today's review, I do want to acknowledge that Tyler Perry is currently facing some serious legal allegations. And I do not condone sexual harassment or assault in any form. And that situation is for the court to address. That being said, today's episode is going to be focused on the play itself, specifically the Meet the Browns play, and what it meant to my family as I was growing up. Like I said, around the holidays, especially, Thanksgiving, these plays were a part of how our family connected and laughed and were able to see parts of our Black experience, our Black Christian experience reflected on the screen. So that's where my focus is going to be today, on the kind of cultural and personal impact of the play itself, and maybe how some of the things that are in the play may not really resonate with me anymore. So that's that. So the Meet the Browns play is actually a spin-off, I guess you could call it, of the Madea plays. Generally, when Tyler Perry first started doing his plays, he built them around the Madea character. And at one point he made Medea's Class Reunion, where at the end we got a cliffhanger, and Medea's daughter, Cora, was notified that Leroy Brown, or as we knew him, Brown, was actually her father. And so this is a spin-off play showing what happens when Cora goes to meet her father's side of the family for the first time. Now, Brown was Medea's neighbor, and so Cora knew him as kind of like a parental figure growing up, as, the neighbor who took her to church and, all of that good stuff. But now it's official, and she gets to meet this side of the family, and they are as wacky as Brown himself. So Now, for a few fun facts about this play, we have quite a few R&B divas in this play. We have Tamika Scott, who is one of the singers from Escape. We have Nikki Gilbert, who's playing Vera, who is from Brownstone. I heard it through the grapevine that you ain't feeling too fine, and I hope that you feel much better. Yes, I do. Y'all, that's a great song. And then we also have Trina Braxton, who of course belongs to the Braxton sisters, who had their own R&B group at some point. And so this play kind of signifies a turning point, because this is Tyler Perry's first play that is not necessarily built around Medea. Medea does not make an appearance in this play. And around the same time is when Tyler Perry began to transition into movies, because at the end of this play, you can hear him promote Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which was his first feature film. And so this was Tyler Perry kind of stepping away from this stage to make sure that his movie was good to go for his movie debut. So this was a transition period for Tyler Perry, but it still has some of the key Tyler Perry tropes in it, and we'll get into that. Now let's talk about this play. The play kicks off, and it basically is going to be centered around the funeral of a 107-year-old patriarch of the Brown family, who is affectionately called Pop Brown. Now, Pop Brown was under the care of Sarah and Larry Brown. So Pop Brown's son is Larry Brown, who we will call LB. They are an older couple, and their dynamic is pretty toxic. They are the old couple that insults each other. They don't seem to have much affection for each other at all, and maybe are just sticking together kind of just because, like, it doesn't make sense to get divorced at this point. So that's them. Over time, more and more family arrives, and we meet them. And here's like a quick breakdown of who we get to meet, right? So first person who comes over is the daughter of Sarah and LB. Her name is technically Millie Jean, but she goes by Malay because she is bougie, which is a character that often gets made fun of in Black movies overall. Like, she's kind of like the same way Terry was in Soul Food, but she has changed the pronunciation of her name. She has an ex-husband who was rich, so she is getting a lot of alimony. She has some anger and resentment due to the fact that her ex-husband abandoned her and her child, and her son, as a result, fell victim to gang violence. And so it's been 4 years since the passing of her son, and she is estranged from her ex-husband, but she is still the person that people rely on financially in her family. And later on, her husband Gerald comes to, be with her and comfort her in, the time of the family's need or whatever. But we find out that he didn't even attend his own son's funeral. So he was a bad dad, a bad father, and now he kind of wants forgiveness, and Malay is kind of not having it. And she's also kind of financially abused by her family, but she is the person who's going to be organizing all of the stuff that's going on with the funeral, making arrangements for the body, buying caskets, all that kind of stuff. Now, another group of people we see are Vera Brown, who is Pop Brown's only daughter. She is older alcoholic auntie. She is very vocal and loud about being upset that her father has passed away, but some of that is a little put on, kind of spectacle-like, but then also kind of there's a hint that there is some guilt there because she didn't do much to actually care for their father as he was aging. Yeah, she's drunk. She's falling out everywhere. She's a real character. She's witty. She can be mean, and she dresses like her brother Brown, very flamboyant and non-matchy. And she's played by Nikki Gilbert. And I don't know that I've seen Nikki Gilbert really play a role before. I think she was in an episode of the Jamie Foxx show or something. But Vera is my favorite character in this play. She's problematic in a lot of ways. However, Nikki did such a good job bringing Vera to life. I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I enjoy her even though she is very problematic and is kind of a representation of like the family knowing that something is wrong and either feeling helpless or whatever to do something about it. Okay. So anyways, so Vera has a son named Will, and Will is married to Kim. They are kind of a younger couple. Will is a gynecologist and Kim is studying to be a surgeon. Kim's kind of main feature is that she is a very loving wife. She is a mother to their twin children, but she can't cook. So in a Black family, if you can't cook, you're subject to ridicule. And we see that all throughout this play. Will, on the other hand, is a handsome doctor, and it's very interesting to me because while Malay is well off because she's receiving alimony. She is the one that is helping to make the arrangements and pay for things, but we don't hear Will being asked to help pay for those things either. So there's this dynamic of, I don't know if it's Malay. The problem is that both Will and Malay are grandchildren of Pop Brown. So it would be interesting to see them kind of share the responsibility if their parents don't have the money like that to bury Pop Brown. But in a lot of ways, you'll see kind of my critique of this play is that it demonstrates what happens in real life in families, like for better or for worse. There's this toxicity of like the women, especially the older women or like the oldest daughters. Those are the people who take care of things, whereas the men in the family don't necessarily, and again, this isn't always, take care of things. So I guess that's pretty true to life. But anyways, Kim and Will's marriage is going to fall apart in this play because Will has had an affair with a patient. It was a one-night stand with a young lady named Tracy. Now, Tracy is played by Trina Braxton, and she finds her way to this family to kind of disrupt things. She claims to be pregnant, and it throws a monkey wrench in all of the other drama that's going on around this funeral, as well as Kim and Will's marriage. So we'll talk about that a little later too. And of course, we have Cora, who is Medea's daughter, who just found out that Leroy Brown, who we'll just call Brown, is her father. Leroy Brown is dressed in some type of Kraft Singles jumpsuit. He looks awful. But Cora is 52 years old, and she is just getting to this point where she's meeting a side of her family that she didn't ever really know, which is really interesting because, again, Brown was her next door neighbor for her childhood. So I don't know why she didn't know like his family maybe a little bit, but we'll ignore that. So yeah, let's get into some of the Black family dynamics. And again, because this is a funeral based situation, it's not necessarily Black people only that these issues come up for, but because these are Black people and because these are things that I know that happen around the time of people's passing, it's really focused on the Black experience, even though some of these things may be universal. So when we talk about funerals, of course, we have to talk about what did the person leave behind. Pop Brown has a $400 insurance policy, so he wasn't well off, and that's pretty much not going to cover everything. So Malay has to jump in financially. So they are calling family members to let them know that this 107-year-old man has passed away. And Malay, of course, who is making these phone calls, says that other family members aren't showing up to be at this funeral because she's turning them down when they ask for money. So that is Malay's burden to bear. So basically, pretty much anyone who's here at the house is the only attendees of the funeral. I will also say about Malay, we talked a little bit earlier about the kind of pain and hurt that she's feeling that really impacts her attitude towards the family. And the family has like pretty little patience for her. I feel like they're not as compassionate towards her as they should be either. But that's just a part of the kind of abuse, right, that happens when you have the oldest daughter or the oldest child or the responsible child. Oftentimes their feelings are not considered. So again, it's one of those true to life things that while it is toxic, it does happen. So I can't be too mad at it. The other thing that kind of comes up is like, when someone dies, do you know what to do? Who are we supposed to call to remove the body? There's conversations about elder care, and, you know, Sarah and LB were the only people taking care of Pop Brown. No one had sent them money to take care of his prescriptions or for his food or anything. There's some resentment there. There's also an issue that pops up a lot in this play that revolves around sexual assault, crazily enough. Now, Sarah claims that Pop Brown would make sexual advances toward her. And Malay is like, well, you know, that's those Brown men. And so there's like this history of perversion in the Brown family that comes up a couple of times, and it's really brushed off. And I'm like, that is toxic AF and kind of disgusting. Like, are you kidding me? So this is one of those things of like, there are families that have a history of this type of behavior that unfortunately is brushed off instead of dealt with like swiftly and harshly. And again, it's true to life, but it's also very toxic. And one of the issues that I have with a lot of media, but Tyler Perry specifically, to me, it's not enough to necessarily just shine a light on an issue. There should be some, if you're going to end the play on a high note, if you're going to make things be resolved or have a resolution, there should be something tangible that people can come away with about how to deal with their own issues. Not just showing the way things are, but how things should be, and how you can get to a place that puts you in a better spot to go from what they are to what they should be. And there's never that real kind of double click of like, there's a person in the family who's doing X, Y, and Z. And then the answer is just kind of pray about it and we forgive and move on. And it's like, there's more that you can do. So yeah, that's an issue for me. I don't like that. Another thing that comes up, we talked about before, is the loss of a child, which is something that happens a lot in Tyler Perry media for whatever reason. There's, of course, the religious themes. This is a very religious family. But then there's some other things that come up too. A quick list include the mispronunciation of words, which is annoying to me. And a lot of people have gone back and forth with trying to figure out hey, are you purposely trying to make Black people, or specifically older Black people, sound stupid by making them mispronounce words? It can be considered a harmful stereotype, so that's annoying. We also have a lot of fat jokes. We also have a lot of old jokes. So fat phobia, we have some homophobia sprinkled in there too. Yeah. There's Color Purple references that we hear later on and all of that stuff. So there are some interesting issues. There are some timely issues that come up around the family, but then there are also these kind of harmful stereotypes or tropes that happen in the play as well that for me don't really age well. So there's a point in the story where the men and the ladies kind of separate. After they all arrive to the house, the men stay home to help kind of clean the house up a little bit, and the women head to the church to start making arrangements. And so we start with the guys. They're doing guy talk. We learn, and at this point, it's just Will, Brown, and LB. And this is funny to me. We learn about Will and the fact that he's a gynecologist. We learn about the Brown family and how they claim these very famous Browns as their own, like James Brown, Bobby Brown, etc., etc. One of the things that I really enjoy about Will's acting, and Will is played by Terrell Carter. He's been in a lot of Tyler Perry plays, but Terrell Carter's acting in this scene is so funny to me. Not funny in a bad way either, but it's very real. Now, Leroy Brown and LB are his uncles, and they're a little bit older, and they're very silly. They're very ridiculous. And Will's acting in that moment is so good because he has this incredulousness with them. He can still laugh with them. He can still kind of make fun of them, challenge them on the stupid stuff that they say, but he does it in a way that feels kind of real. He's actually talking to older people who maybe he doesn't agree with, or maybe he knows that they're exaggerating, but it just feels real to me. And I really enjoy that about Will's acting with his uncle in those moments. Now, they end up talking about finding a good woman, and a good woman can cook, and a good woman can whatever. And they end up singing a song, when you find a good woman, you find yourself a good thing, which is very interesting because we learn later that Will has cheated on his wife. So the older men are trying to impart some wisdom on the younger man, which is very interesting because I feel like the men in this play give better advice than the women. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Now, down to the church, the ladies are there putting together flowers, picking out caskets, making arrangements for the funeral. We find out that Vera has a crush on the pastor of the church, whose name is Reverend Oliver. We meet a young lady who comes to the church named Tracy Stevens, who is played by Trina Braxton, and she claims to be pregnant by a married man. Later on, we find out that she kind of found herself amongst these women in order to confront Will. So she purposely kind of followed him there around the funeral so that she could stir some stuff up, okay? But they don't know this at this point. So all of the ladies except Malay are like, oh, it's going to get better. Trust in the Lord and pray. And Sarah even gives Tracy her phone number and address and is like, call me anytime. While I really like this, and I think that it is very refreshing to see people in the church be open and accepting of people, especially if they've had some type of moral failure, like sleeping with and getting impregnated by a married man. They was doing the most. Giving your phone number and address. Phone number is one thing. Giving your address to a young lady that you just met. And Malay says as much, and she kind of clocks it and is like, girl, you're getting what you deserve because you slept with the married man. And her family is just kind of hard on her about, why are you being so mean? And Malay ends up being right. Of course, we never acknowledged that Malay was right and that her instincts were right about this young lady. But of course, Malay, again, is the Terry of this family, and she doesn't get credit for anything except the credit card charges of paying for this funeral. Okay. So anyways, later on, the women are talking about a lot of things. A lot of things come up. And here's where I'm saying that, like, the women don't necessarily give the best advice, or this is one piece where the women don't give the best advice. Vera talks about corporal punishment and her son turning out so well because she beats him. Sarah is talking about how hypervigilant she has to be with her husband. This is another staple in Tyler Perry plays, or Tyler Perry media overall, where a woman talks about how she is checking time cards at work and comparing those to the pay that he gets in the bank account. And she is checking phone records and text messages and emails, or, you know, all these type of records to make sure that her husband is on the straight and narrow. And Cora challenges that and is like, well, what's the point of doing that? Shouldn't you be able to trust your husband? And Sarah's response is like, there's some men who will get up and do the right thing because they love the Lord. And then there are some men that you have to put the fear of God in. And Sarah says that LB is basically the latter. And it's like, girl, it's not even worth it because that man don't even like you. And that's the other issue. Even though they have this toxic dynamic in their relationship that's, I hate to see. Like, some people like to see that type of dynamic where the husband and wife are like arguing and snipping at each other all the time. I don't like to see that personally. And again, it's very true to life, but it's toxic and nasty. And it's like, it's gross. Anyways. One of my favorite parts of the play, my favorite Tyler Perry song probably ever, I would say it's probably number one, but definitely in the top 3 of Tyler Perry's songs from plays, is the song that Vera makes up about a good man. And the women do it a cappella, and Cora is making like a horn noise, and I think Tamika is doing like a hi-hat noise. So there is like basically glee in church. And I love this song. The women are all singing together. There's a few verses about what they love about good men in their lives. And Vera's verse, of course, is the funniest. I'm leaving a man with a check in his hand, taking care of his kids like a good man can. Ain't nothing like a good man, loving his woman and strong in his stance. I love that song. Okay. But all the ladies are there for it, including Tracy. It's very sweet. I'm into it. Like, my favorite part of the play by freaking far. Okay. And the ladies end up leaving except for Cora. Cora's there finishing up the flower arrangements, and she ends up running into Reverend Oliver, the pastor of the church who Vera has a crush on. Reverend Oliver is sweet on Cora because he kind of knows her from around the way. He invites her to go to lunch with him. She's very hesitant, but eventually does. So they kind of strike up a romance, which is cute, but in some ways ridiculous. And we'll talk about that more. Oh, there's one other thing that I want to say about when the ladies are all talking. There's a crazy reframe of an actual like historical event that happened that is freaking nuts. And again, when the women are talking to each other, they give the worst advice. And this is one of the problems that I have with Tyler Perry plays, because when Tyler Perry is dressed as Medea, it sounds like it's advice coming from a woman, but it's advice still coming from a male gaze. And I feel like that's why the men's advice in this play feels more reasonable than the women's advice, personally. But one of the things that Kim says is that, you know, she's 35 years old at this point, and she feels a lot of pressure to stay young and fit for her husband because there are a bunch of 20-somethings that she's competing with. That is called triangulation, but we won't get into that. But she says, y'all remember when, you know, Janet Jackson's boob popped out with, you know, the wardrobe malfunction? She did that because she was competing with young women, even though she has nothing to, it's freaking Janet Jackson. This is the stuff that I'm talking about. That's a crazy reframe. It was a freaking accident. How can you reframe that accident being her trying to compete with younger women? It's a lie. It's a scheme that Todd set up to come back to us with the BS. This is, y'all, why? Okay, so in this next part of the play, we're at the house. Malay is coordinating everything. Tracy ends up showing up at the house kind of unannounced, but Sarah did give her the address, and Malay apologizes to Tracy for, being a little crazy a little earlier, even though pretty soon she won't have anything to apologize for, okay? Cora comes back after having lunch with the Reverend, and Brown tries to parent her, and it's too late. She's 52. She has 2 daughters. There's nothing you can tell her about the birds and the bees that she didn't experience or know for herself. And it's really interesting because there are a lot of people who, like, if they meet or reunite with a parent later in life, sometimes the parent tries to parent them again. And it's like that ship has sailed. You got to create something new. And Brown just really is not doing that. He's also being very ignorant. And so something that he tells her is kissing can get you pregnant. And it just reminded me of the kind of rhetoric that you would hear in spiritual or religious communities that focused on abstinence and felt like if they taught you about the science or told you more about the actual process of reproduction or having babies, that it would just make you want to do it more. And so they would just say things that didn't make sense in an effort to keep you in the dark, not knowing that the dark is the dangerous place. Being ignorant and not knowing things will totally set you up for unwanted pregnancies. So that was something that I was this is also kind of true to life, even though it's way too late for him to be telling a 50-plus-year-old woman about. At this point is where Gerald shows up. Now, Gerald, again, is Malay's estranged ex-husband. He is well off, and the family is getting along with him a little too well for Malay's for Malay's liking. And she's like, hey, when I divorced him, he divorced from everybody up in here, which I agree, actually. So this is where we found out more about the reason why they lost their son, including because it was Gerald's negligence in not caring for his son and guiding him. There's one point where they're having this disagreement, and he kind of grabs her up by her arm, and all the men in the family kind of stand up. And they're like, hey, don't be grabbing her like that. But then literally 30 seconds later, he yells in her face over her, and he's like, we're not going to talk about this right now. And everybody in the room shuts up and looks the other way. And again, it's toxic AF, but it's very real. And the problem that I have is that yelling at someone's face and lording over them, standing over them in this very aggressive manner, is also abuse. It's not just putting your hands on somebody. Yelling at someone's face like that also counts as abuse. And again, this is the issue. It happens, but there's no real commentary on it, and there's no real resolution about that. Gerald was abusive to Malay in this moment, and in the end, she kind of forgives him. What the heck is going on in this play? This is this is what I'm talking about, y'all. But essentially, Gerald wants to be there for her and to love on her, and, during this time of grief, even though he didn't even show up to his own child's funeral, y'all. It's very hard for a marriage to survive the passing of a child. And I feel like it's even harder for that relationship to come to a close and for those people to circle back. It sounds almost impossible. I don't know if there's ever been in the history of marriage anyone whose relationship came to an end after the passing of a child and they circled back and reunited. That sounds very like a very challenging thing to do, but whatever. Okay, Tyler Perry. Now, at this point, things are kind of getting heated a little bit. Tracy is like, oh, I'm going to get out of here. But Tracy and Will end up recognizing each other. And Tracy takes this opportunity to blow up their spot. She announces herself as, the woman that Will had an affair with, and that she is pregnant with his baby. And now everyone is up in a tizzy. Okay. Tracy actually followed him there to blow up his spot. And again, Malay was right. Justice for Malay. Okay. So things kind of fall apart, essentially. The family are all going separate ways. Cora is talking about, I thought Medea was crazy, but this family is messed up. We just got a bunch of things that are going on and happening in the family in their time of grief. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so the only person left in the room after everyone kind of goes their separate ways and kind of storm off or whatever is Sarah. And Sarah sings the standard Jesus Fix It song that happens basically in the middle of every Tyler Perry play. Sarah's voice is very beautiful. She has this rasp to her voice that is just very pretty. And Sarah, I didn't mention this before, but Sarah is played by Joyce Williams. So now we're in like this next stage of the play. Everything is still going wrong. And the question is, how does Jesus fix it? So first up, we have Kim and Will, who are alone and they're fighting, of course. And she is just in disbelief at how he could do this to her. And Will is like, I wish I could take it back. I don't think she's pregnant. It was a mistake. It only happened one time. And she kind of trying not to hear it. And I don't blame her. Okay. So he sings a song. Again, this man has one of the best voices. He has excellent voice. His voice he does a lot of runs. Like you can argue that he does too many runs sometimes, but he just has an excellent voice. Amazing. Okay. He sings to her. He's begging. He's on his knees. He's taking his shirt off. He's doing all this stuff, just begging. And she's like, it ain't enough. And I'm like, girl, tell him. Okay. Now, Now, in a new scene, we have some of the siblings arguing. I can't remember what they were arguing about, but it was getting annoying. And so Sarah and Cora decide to start breaking out into song. Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away. That's the song they sing. And we sang that in church back in the day. I really enjoyed that song. But they start singing that song and it kind of disrupts the arguing. They claim that Pop Brown used to do that back in the day. And then this is where the other, standard Tyler Perry thing comes in, where there's the church medley. Now they sing a bunch of different songs that if you're in the Black church, you probably will know. But again, as a Black child who grew up in the church, it was actually very rare for me to see that experience kind of more accurately represented for me. And so getting to see this on a stage actually really was important for me. Like representation matters. And I got to see like my Black church experience be, on the screen. So that was actually really nice to see, for better or for worse. Now, of course, this medley almost always ends with like an inappropriate remix, and Vera ends it with with singing a very inappropriate R. Kelly song. Of course she freaking does. But later, Cora and Reverend Oliver, who was over at the house, of course, during the church medley, invites Cora out to go to Hawaii. Ugh. Okay, so Cora becomes very hesitant to do this Hawaii trip because they literally just met a couple of days ago. Even though they have a little bit of a history, this romantic thing is still new, and she has some hesitation, which I kind of understand. And I feel like Reverend Oliver is putting a lot of pressure on her, and it's too much. If you know anything about reverends in the Black church, you got to watch your back. So I understand Cora's hesitation. I really do. But also she's 52 years old. We'll talk more about that later when she gives her decision on what to do. Now, there is a really refreshing scene, something that actually, if the circumstances were just slightly different, would be a very positive, refreshing thing. There's a point where Vera talks to her son and basically tells him, I didn't raise you to be this way. Why would you do such a thing? You're going to mess everything up. You're going to mess up everything that you work for. She's going to take you for half. And she basically kind of has to have this conversation with Will at knife point, because he basically tells her, well, I don't want to hear it. I already got to hear it from Kim. And she's like, you finna shut up and listen to me. Now, I don't like that. Will is an adult man. And while it was kind of disrespectful a little bit for him to like talk to his mom in that manner, Black moms feel like they have license for your lifetime to kind of put you in check. And it's like, I don't know. But if she has a knife, it's like, that's violent. Anyways, she basically tells him, Kim is going to take you, going to take you for everything you got. And I'm going to help her find the best lawyer to do it. And it's very nice and refreshing to see a mother-in-law side with the daughter-in-law, because a lot of times, a lot of moms make excuses for what their sons do and treat them like the second coming of the Lord. And this is one of the things, and I'm like, this is actually nice and refreshing to see. I actually really enjoyed that. Okay. Now here comes another issue. And remember, I talked about how the women in this play give bad advice. There's a point where Sarah and Kim are having a conversation. Again, Sarah is LB's wife and Kim is Will's wife. Kim is distraught because her husband, who she really had a lot of faith in, who she was sure would never cheat on her, has cheated on her and potentially gotten another woman pregnant. Her world view, her view of this man, her view of her marriage is shattered. And of course, her heart is in a billion pieces, and she has to deal with that at the same time as being here with the family. It's very hard. And then Sarah starts giving her some advice. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? This is bad advice. Okay. So years ago, I heard Tyler Perry in an interview or somewhere, something that he was saying where he said that he was the person who he had a friend who was going through some relationship issues. And, in that moment, he said to that person, make yourself a list, take a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left side, list all the good things they've done. On the right side, list all the bad things they've done. And if the bad outweighs the good, then you can leave. But if the good outweighs the bad, then you should stick around. And while I love a list, y'all, I love a list. I make lists all the time. Okay. It really is a gross kind of oversimplification because it's not just about the past and what this person has done for you and your history. If you're making a list like this, it means that they betrayed the crap out of you. And that level of betrayal and the amount of work that it's going to take to regain the trust, if that ever happens, is astronomical, because not only do you have to think about the history of your relationship, you have to think about where you are now. And considering everything that's happened, can you trust this person again? Do you want to be with somebody who could lie to you about something and who could betray you in this way? Are you prepared for the fallout? Are you prepared to be with something that other people know that you were betrayed? Are you prepared to deal with a baby mama? Are you prepared to deal with this child getting your partner's time and resources? Like, girl, that list of just the stuff that's happened prior in the past is not good enough. And I'm like, here's the problem. Tyler Perry likes to write things by himself, which is cool. But if things are only coming from his brain, he's limited by his knowledge. And it'd be really nice if Tyler Perry, not just with this, but like with anything. And my husband was watching Straw earlier today, and I was like, it would have been so nice if he consulted with like a psychologist to make a more accurate representation of what's going on with this woman who is having a psychotic break. And it's like, he makes these things up in isolation and it's only from his brain. And it's like, we need more than just what's in your brain, Tyler Perry. Okay. Like, call up Iyanla, pay her a few $1,000s to see, hey, Iyanla, what do you think would be the best course of action between here and there? Call up somebody, a psychologist as an advisor on like, what's a healthier way to deal with this? Y'all, go to therapy, marriage counseling, do something. I mean, come on, like, a therapy almost never comes up in the Tyler Perry universe. And when it does come up, if you recall, he had like the Confessions of a Marriage Counselor, where he basically, like, the marriage counselor had no right to be counseling other people in their marriages because their own marriage fell apart. It's like, villainizing therapy is a very big, like, Black church thing or Black people thing. It's kind of unfortunate. And I wish we did a better job of this. Again, the stuff that I'm talking about, like in these plays, these things happen. And while they may be true to life, there is no double click into like, how do we change things? How do we break the cycle? How do we make it better? And the answer is just like sing and pray together and everything will be smoothed over, apparently. And I think the most egregious part is that Sarah tells Kim that it is a woman's job to restore her husband. Excuse me? That's Jesus's job. Don't ask me to do Jesus's job for him, okay? Some people are just incorrigible. There are some betrayals that you just can't come back from, okay? And cheating is one of them. Even the Bible is like, hey, if you cheat, like, you can leave. Why isn't that acceptable advice? It's crappy advice. Okay, y'all, it's crappy advice. Tyler Perry has made a lot of money off of giving women crappy advice. I'll just say that. Now let's move on. We have the men talking again, and this time we have Brown, LB, Will, and Gerald. The men basically admonish Will for his indiscretion, which I think is very interesting and also very refreshing and is actually more decent advice again that the men are given than the women are given in this play, because in a roundabout way, Brown is basically telling Will that he needs to truly apologize and repent, and he's doing it through a more like religious and spiritual lens. But Brown's advice is basically saying Will needs to look within himself and change his behavior, and that's the way that he can win his wife back, by legitimately apologizing to her and changing his behavior and repenting and improving the way he acts in accordance with his values in much simpler terms. Basically, truly apologize and change your ways. Again, much better advice, because too often men actually pat each other on the back for cheating. So it's refreshing to see men be like, hey, that's not right. Like, what you did was awful and you need to make it right. So Tyler Perry, stick to giving men advice, please. Okay, so Gerald pops in and gives his more like new age advice, which, you know, doesn't end up working out for him, especially since he's on the rocks with Malay, even though he's trying to get back with her. But Malay enters the room, the other guys leave. And there's one thing that keeps happening in this play where people want privacy, and it's kind of a function of the way the stage is set up, but like Black people do not want other people to have privacy in their houses. That's something that happens in the play that also kind of feels true to life too, which I think is hilarious. But Malay and Gerald actually do get some alone time. They talk, and basically Brown is like, hey, Will, the same advice that we gave to Will is that you need to apologize. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit, because during the time where Brown is giving Will the advice, Brown is played by David Mann, and again, Will is played by Terrell Carter. And there are elements of how they're interacting with each other. It's not Brown and Will, but you can tell that it's David and Terrell. Because there's a part where Will just keeps, or Terrell just keeps breaking character and laughing because Brown is making fun of him. And it feels like something that David would make fun of Terrell for. And so he's like, oh, your arms are so greasy. And so he's taking like the oil or the lotion or whatever off of Will's arms and putting it on his own hands. Or when he's instructing Will to say, I'm sorry, he's like, you know, do it like you do those vocal runs, like making fun of the way that Will sings. So I really enjoy that, to see Brown kind of get Will to break character. It's actually very funny. But let's move on. We got Malay and Gerald talking. Gerald admits that he was very neglectful as a father and a husband. He wants forgiveness, and he, you know, says, I'm sorry. And we get some clarity about the white woman that he apparently left Malay for, but the timeline doesn't support that. He actually met her after and ended up divorcing this white lady because he was too in love with Malay. Malay admits that she has been so angry because, you know, she sees her son every time she sees him. And they end up singing a song together. What happened to the man? And they reunite during the song, so much so that they kind of end the song with them kind of getting frisky. Okay. So again, circling back after a death of a child sounds really hard. So I guess the theme is just reuniting at all costs in this freaking story. Okay. Anyways, Reverend Oliver and Cora do have a short conversation before we get to the funeral scene. Vera, of course, is jealous and has been throwing shade at Cora this whole time. We won't get into that. But Cora ends up turning down the Hawaii invite. And the Rev is like, I'm certain that you're my wife. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this religious pressure is like awful. They do like a little stage kiss, and Cora is like, well, I'm not going to Hawaii because I actually don't trust myself and I don't want to be led into temptation and X, Y, and Z. A very religious thing to do. But also, Cora, you 52. Cora, you 52. Asking, like doing the chastity thing at 52 is like a little wild. What I'm saying is not necessarily in accordance with a lot of religious views, but girl, you 52. Girl, go to Hawaii. If you can't control yourself in Hawaii, you can't control yourself nowhere, girl. Go to Hawaii, okay? I just think it's a little silly to be 52 and be like, oh, I don't want to spend the night at your house, Timmy. Like, girl, take your behind to Hawaii. He said y'all gonna have separate rooms, girl. Anyways, we also get this kind of reuniting situation between Will, Kim, and Tracy. And Will goes to get Tracy on the advice of his mother, interestingly enough. And Tracy basically says, I'm not pregnant. I just followed him because he ghosted me after one night. And I kind of been stalking him a little bit, but he apologized to me and that's all I wanted. But then she still kind of has an attitude about it. So Kim kind of chases her out the house, essentially. And Kim is just so upset still, but she did the little, you know, paper exercise with the bad stuff and the good stuff. And she's like, I'm not going to let this one indiscretion like mess up everything that we've built together. So she starts stating her terms and she's like, you're going to pay for me to go on vacation for a couple of weeks with my sisters on a private jet. And then the house better be clean when I get back. And then you're going to start kissing up and then you're going to start at my toes and you're going to work your way up to my shins and whatever she says next. And what's funny is Vera is like, make him kiss your butt too, which is hilarious. But girl, you deserve more than that. He would have to, here's the problem, that she forgave him too quickly. And to Will's credit, here's what I will say. There are a lot of people who cheat and have no remorse. They want to stay in the relationship for one reason or another, but they don't want to do the work to regain their partner's trust. To Will's credit, and based on the advice that he got from his mother and the older men in his family, he actually went and apologized to Tracy and got her off of his back, which is one thing. So now she's no longer disrespecting their marriage and Will's wife. And he's also acquiescing, which is probably not the right word, but he's willing to oblige Kim in her request for like, here's what I need from you, kind of as punishment, and like moving forward what I need from you. And that's the part that was missing. Like, paying for me to go on vacation, like, cool. Does that mean you're sorry? Not really. Like, asking him like, hey, I'm going to be able to see everything on your, like, you can't come home past this hour. I need to be able to see your text message, phone records, like things that actually would instill trust. It would have been nice for her to ask for those things. Again, that I have a problem with this play really not double clicking into that stuff. Is very annoying to me, but girl, you should ask for more. LB ends up kicking everybody out of the house on the way to the funeral. And yeah, we move on to the funeral, y'all. The funeral is actually my least favorite part of this play. It has very black church energy, and that's not why I like it the least. But again, it is nice to see the black church energy on the screen and like feel something familiar there. The funeral is kind of long and drawn out. And the worst part about it is that Brown puts himself on the program and he holds everyone hostage. Now, by this time, the funeral has been going on for a minute because people are starting to complain. Like, they want to get to the repast, okay? But Brown is holding them hostage with shenanigans. I feel like most of this was probably improvised, but it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's supposed to be funny, but I actually found myself being more annoyed because Brown is not only holding people hostage, he's actually kind of abusive while he's doing it. And it's not funny, but it's like, it's an exaggeration too, because I've never been to a funeral that was this off the rails, but also like, what is happening here? Okay. So there's a part where Brown starts to talk about his dad and how much he misses him. So he goes between telling stories and singing and then wailing and crying because he's going to miss his father. There's where he talks about his father teaching him and his siblings how to swim and the abusive conditions under which he did it. And we find out that Pop Brown actually was not really that good of a person. He made sexual advances at his own daughter-in-law. Pop Brown was physically abusive to the children because at one point Brown says, I even miss the way he used to blacken my eyes. When he taught the kids how to swim, he took them out at like 2:00 in the morning and threw them into a frozen lake. Like, was Pop Brown a good person? And again, like, there is this veneration of black men who stay and remain in their families, even if they were kind of toxic to those families, because there's so many men who don't stay around that the bar is in Tartarus. Okay. So anyways, it's somewhat true to life, but also like kind of sad. We also never hear a mention of their mom. What happened to her? There was some hint or suggestion that Pop Brown might have been a single father at some point, but we actually really don't know. Now, when I was talking about the abuse earlier that Brown was doing while he's holding everybody hostage, there's a few things that he does actually. So at one point, he forces Sarah to run around the casket, and then he asks her to skip around the casket, but he does it in this very forceful way. Basically forces her to skip around the casket, which is freaking crazy. He does this thing that like some pastors do in churches where they like kind of hit you on the forehead to kind of, I don't know what they're doing. I have a hard time describing it, but they do it to like either bless you or rebuke you or whatever. He does that to multiple people there. He does it to his brother LB and knocks LB off of his seat. He does it to Sarah as well. He does it to Reverend Oliver and Cora because they are striking up a relationship. He calls out his nephew Will for being a cheater. He is like airing out the family laundry. He's hitting people in the head to bless or rebuke them. And it's a lot. It's a lot. LB eventually kind of slaps Brown back as well. And then of course there's the kind of famous scene where Vera is, you know, crying over her dad and LB is tired of her wailing and thinks that she's putting on a show. So he actually throws her in the casket with their father, which is crazy and on some levels is kind of funny, but also still abusive, y'all. So this kind of like kicks off a fight between the siblings. The siblings are fighting and yelling and all that stuff because LB and Sarah have resentment over the fact that like y'all are in here acting a fool and crying and carrying on, and you all didn't even send money so dad could eat. And, you know, we took on the burden of taking care of him and you all didn't do anything. And, you know, they're having this disagreement. They're about to fight in the church, which is low-key kind of crazy. They end up being broken up and somehow or another, you know, are kind of rebuked into don't fight in the Lord's house and y'all say you're sorry. And then they do the I'm sorry. And it's like, okay, y'all. Again, here's the problem that I have is that it's no double click. There's no way you can resolve issues like this in real life. Like, come on now. I understand that in a play, you don't necessarily have a lot of time to get your point across, but it would be nice for there to be like a more realistic feel to some of these things about having like a real conversation and deciding to move forward in a more positive way. But just saying, I'm sorry, and then now it's all water under the bridge until it's not anymore. While it can be true to life for some people, it just is kind of awful in a play that's supposed to have more of a resolution, like in my mind. So yeah, the family kind of reunites and makes up, and they all do the, you know, standard at the end of the play, we sing a song that's related to family or how good God has been or how we're positively moving forward in another direction. And theirs is Ain't Nothing Like Family. That's their song. Of course, they all sound beautiful and, you know, they all singing and doing their solo parts and all that stuff. Again, that's how the play usually ends. And the play is over with Tyler Perry and the cast come out. We get introduced to the band, all of that good stuff. And this is where he is saying, hey, y'all should really, you know, come out. My first movie is coming out soon, Diary of a Mad Black Woman. So yeah, that kind of helps us put things in place. This play came to video in 2004, but I think they were actually touring, performing the play in 2003. So it's an interesting time for Tyler Perry, and his life really, his trajectory really changed after that. So at the end of every review, we ask the same two questions. Is it worth a rewatch, and does it hold up today? Y'all, I'm struggling with these questions, and I'm just going to be very honest with you. If you know the characters, if you have a history with watching these Tyler Perry plays and understand Black family dynamics, and you don't mind the kind of time capsule piece of it. So a lot of the issues that I have with this play is that some of the more toxic things that happen, they are true to life, but they don't get resolved in a real way. And also it's very focused on kind of what is versus how things should be, or breaking those cycles. So if you are okay with like this kind of snapshot in time of like, this is how some family dynamics are, I mean, why not? Like, feel free to give it a rewatch and see, do you agree with some of this advice? Does this still hold up for you personally? Like for me, a lot of this stuff is ringing toxic now. Back when it first came out, I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I didn't really know any better. I didn't know what I know now as a person who's been in therapy for a few years. Like, there are some things that I've had to disconnect with, and that really colors the way I watch, you know, some of the things that I used to watch before, including Tyler Perry's works. Now, if you have never seen this play before, I wouldn't suggest that you watch it now unless that's something that you want to get into. You probably kind of need to know at least the play before this to kind of watch this one. I just kind of wouldn't suggest it at this point. It's really interesting because there are a group of people on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel called Cinepals, and they have been watching a lot of Black media, including Tyler Perry plays. And interestingly enough, none of these people have history in the Black church, and they're not Black people, but they still are enjoying the play. So take that with a grain of salt, y'all. Now, when it comes to does this hold up, I feel like kind of. I've talked about this before, but these family dynamics are problematic, but they're also rooted in some level of truth. It kind of feels real in a lot of ways. I think it could be better with a double click. I think it could be better with like getting rid of the homophobia or the kind of like acceptance of the unwanted sexual advances, like with the fat jokes and the old jokes. Like if some of that stuff was taken out, it would hold much better. And if we could like actually figure out healthy ways to resolve family issues and family dynamics, I think that that would be great too. And like, telling people to go to therapy and like stop judging people for being different or doing things different, it could be better. So in a lot of ways, it does not hold up for me. Okay. I feel like with Tyler Perry and a lot of his media, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with him. I love that he is very supportive and apparently pays people well, particularly Black actors and creators. But I feel like the quality of his works can oftentimes be very questionable, from the wigs to the storylines. And of course, still no double clicking in the fact that he likes to write a lot of his stuff himself. And again, when you write from one viewpoint, it's very hard to have a more balanced view because you just don't know what you don't know. And I think that his plays suffer because he is not getting more input from other people. I feel like a lot of the comedy can be lowbrow and recycled, similar themes across many of the things that he has worked on. But in some ways, it's also very special and like uniquely ours. And Tyler Perry got his start because Black church folks were there supporting him all the way. And he's a demonstration of when you find your niche, people will support you and that you can succeed. And so it's actually like positive to see someone rise up in that way. Again, notwithstanding all the stuff that's going on with him now. I think in some ways we kind of created a monster, but Tyler Perry is a demonstration of what can happen when Black people go out and are supportive of things that they really believe in. And again, that's for better or for worse. I mean, some people criticize him for perpetuating stereotypes, harmful stereotypes about Black people. And I think that there is some validity to it. And I also think it's nice to have a creator like Tyler Perry having his own studios and paying Black actors what they're worth. Like, it's like everything in the Black experience. Like, we have to take the bitter with the sweet. So, I mean, you all let me know what you think. All right, now let's talk about the ratings for Meet the Browns, the play. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to find the Rotten Tomatoes review for the play. Meet the Browns was not only a movie that ended up coming out, I think in 2007, featuring Angela Bassett and Rick Fox, but there is also a Meet the Browns TV series. So those are on Rotten Tomatoes, but the play itself is not. So I had to go and find the reviews. There are over 700 of these reviews on IMDb for this body of work, and IMDb runs on a 10-point scale, and Meet the Browns scored 3.7. I think that's very interesting. And because Tyler Perry has a very niche targeted audience, particularly like the Black church community, and that in itself is only a microcosm of the Black community, it kind of depends. Things have changed in the past 20 years or so, but the Tyler Perry audience is unique, I'll say. And the issue that I have with review sites like IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes is that a lot of times we get critics who watch these things that aren't a part of the target audience. They're not going to get the jokes. They're not going to understand it. They're not going to get those family dynamics, and they really won't understand them. And so for that reason is, the reason that I started my podcast is that sometimes the nostalgia and being a part of the right audience really helps frame the way things kind of loom in your heart. So for me, if I was, to grade this on a 10-point scale, being a part of, a Black religious family, and based on all of the stuff I said here, I would probably give it like a 6, maybe a 6.3 or so. I really did enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed rewatching it, even though some things in it were problematic. And even though Tyler Perry in some ways is a little problematic, but it is fun to watch. Like, Tyler Perry is not in the play. So if you aren't really here for Medea's shenanigans, this is a good play to watch as well. It's nice to meet these kind of characters that are kind of on the fringe and get to see their family drama and how their family operates around a funeral, which I can identify with. And so in some ways it feels real, in other ways it feels a little bit toxic, and sometimes toxic and real are not mutually exclusive. So I would give it a 6. Let me know if you've watched this play before, if you are a part of the target audience, or maybe if you're not, let me know what you would rate it. I'm kind of interested to see what you all have to say. Now, I want to say a super special thank you for listening to my review of the 2003 Meet the Browns play by Tyler Perry. Let me know if this play holds up for you. Did you rewatch it recently? Do you agree with the IMDb reviews or my review of this film? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to share your thoughts on all of our social media pages, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, as well as our brand new TikTok. So make sure you follow us. Next week, we are headed into the holiday season with a super special review of Mariah Carey's first Christmas album. This is the album that put her on the map as what some people call her as the Queen of Christmas. And I'm super excited to review it because it's the first time I'm going to be reviewing a music album. So it'll be really cool to check that out. So make sure you come right back here or wherever you listen to podcasts, because you won't want to miss that. Peace out. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Sub Media Reviews. New episodes drop just about every week, and our brand new YouTube series is coming your way. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook so you never miss a thing. Got a movie, album, or show you think we should review? Send it our way. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and just chill till the next episode.